Ever watched someone fix a problem and accidentally create three new ones? That's this whole video. It's 49 real moments where Americans tried shortcuts, microwaving a wet phone, blowtorching frozen pipes, shooting a wasp nest, and ended up destroying their own stuff instead. No villains, no burglars, just pure confidence and zero planning. 1. A DIY genius in Wisconsin decided he was done with winter pallor but too cheap for a salon membership. He dragged a sketchy, used tanning bed into his basement to save a few bucks on a tan. Ignoring the fact that this industrial toaster required heavy-duty voltage, he plugged the beast directly into a standard outlet designed for a lamp. The second he hit the switch, he didn't get a golden glow. He got a neighborhood-wide blackout. He shorted the grid right before the Super Bowl kickoff, leaving his neighbors staring at blank screens. His only color that day came from the burning red shame of knowing the utility truck was parked outside his house. 2. Down in Georgia, a backyard mechanic thought he had outsmarted the auto industry. Instead of draining his car's oil from the bottom like a sane person, he raided the kitchen for a plastic turkey baster to siphon it out from the top. Apparently, he forgot that engine oil gets hotter than a Thanksgiving bird. The cheap plastic dissolved instantly, snapping in half and spraying boiling sludge all over his face and chest. He stood there dripping like a greased pig while his neighbor, beer in hand, yelled over the fence, "That's exactly why Jiffy Lube exists, Einstein." He saved 20 bucks on an oil change but likely spent a fortune on burn cream. 3. In 2006, a Pennsylvania homeowner spotted a spider in his laundry room and decided a shoe wasn't enough. He needed chemical warfare. He constructed a homemade flamethrower using a Bic lighter and a can of aerosol hairspray, channeling his inner action hero. While he successfully incinerated the spider, the victory was short-lived because the wall behind it caught fire immediately. The flames raced into the insulation and burned the entire house to the ground. It seems a bit excessive to destroy your own mortgage just to kill a single arachnid. But on the bright side, he can be absolutely certain that the spider didn't make it out alive. 4. In Illinois, a man fell victim to one of those viral life hacks that usually end up ruining your life. A video claimed that wrapping a Wi-Fi router in tinfoil would focus the signal and boost speed. He took this gospel truth and mummified his router so tightly it looked like a baked potato. Predictably, covering a heat-generating computer in conductive metal caused it to cook itself from the inside out. The plastic casing melted into a toxic puddle, effectively destroying his internet connection. Now his apartment smells like burning circuits, and his roommate isn't speaking to him because they're stuck using mobile data until the replacement arrives. 5. A Kentucky man decided that store-bought wasp spray was for cowards and chose a more direct approach to pest control. He grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun to remove a nest hanging from his garage eaves. Physics, however, was not on his side. He fired a blast that completely missed the wasps, but punched 2 cartoon-sized holes through the garage wall and put a slug right into the engine of his riding lawnmower parked inside. The wasps, likely deafened but unharmed, kept buzzing, while the homeowner was left explaining to his insurance agent why his landscaping equipment had suffered a fatal gunshot wound. 6. A woman in New York learned the hard way that vanity and kitchen appliances are a volatile mix. She was applying a pair of those trendy magnetic eyelashes while standing next to her stove. Don't ask why she chose that location. She fumbled one, and the magnet did its job a little too well, snapping straight toward the heat source. The synthetic lash ignited instantly, flaring up like a mini firework inches from her face. She managed to save her eyebrows from total destruction, but the lash melted into a sad black lump. Her date night was canceled, mostly because the house smelled like burnt plastic and poor decision-making. 7. A holiday enthusiast in New Hampshire wanted his car to be as festive as his living room, so he draped the exterior in residential Christmas lights. The brilliance ended the moment he plugged the rig into his cigarette lighter while driving down the road. The massive power surge blew the car's main fuse, killing the dashboard lights and stalling the engine dead in the middle of a busy intersection. When the police showed up to direct traffic around the dark, lifeless vehicle, the officer didn't even write a ticket immediately. He was laughing too hard at the sight of a grown man defeated by holiday cheer. 8. After dropping his iPhone in a puddle, a visionary in California decided to skip the slow bowl of rice method and fast-track the drying process in his microwave. He assumed that if it warms up pizza, it dries out tech, right? Wrong. Within 3 seconds, the phone sparked an electrical storm that fried the logic board, destroyed the microwave's magnetron, and set off every smoke alarm in the building. His roommate rushed in screaming, "Who nukes a phone?" It's a fair question, really. Now he has a melted brick, a broken oven, and a very compelling reason to stay off the internet for a while. 9. A health-conscious homeowner in Colorado decided the filtered water from his fridge wasn't fancy enough, so he shoved actual lemon slices directly into the internal dispenser tank. He thought he was creating a spa experience. Instead, he created a biological weapon. The citric acid corroded the seals, and the lemons rotted into a gray sludge, turning his drinking water into a moldy, yellow broth that tasted like foot fungus. Guests stopped asking for ice and started bringing their own sealed bottles to dinner parties. He ended up having to replace the entire refrigerator because, apparently, you can't exorcise the ghost of rotten citrus from a water line. 10. In the scorching heat of Arizona, a woman read a blog about keeping cosmetics fresh by cooling them, so she tossed her entire $300 beauty kit into the deep freezer. Unfortunately, she stored her high-end foundations and lipsticks right next to a bag of unsealed frostbitten raw chicken wings. Science took over, and the fats in the makeup absorbed every volatile compound from the poultry. Now, every time she applies her eyeliner, she smells like a spicy buffalo wing doused in blue cheese. She essentially paid a fortune to walk around smelling like the happy hour menu at a dive bar, which wasn't exactly the fresh look she was going for. 11. A paranoid resident in Illinois bought a budget home security kit consisting entirely of plastic decoy cameras to scare off burglars. In a rush to fortify the perimeter, she used industrial-strength construction adhesive to mount them. Completely upside down? The lens was pointing at the sky, and the branding was inverted. When her neighbor asked if she was worried about an aerial assault or trying to catch criminal raccoons walking on the roof, she deadpanned. "I'm only watching the suspicious ones." It's a bold strategy to deter thieves by signaling that the homeowner has absolutely no idea how technology works, but hey, maybe confusion is the best defense. 12. A backyard pyrotechnician in Wisconsin decided he didn't need a license to make things go boom. He spent hours scraping the sulfur off hundreds of match heads, packing them into a pipe, and wrapping the whole thing in half a roll of duct tape. He called it a firework. The local bomb squad later called it an improvised explosive device. When he lit the fuse, he didn't get a sparkly display. He got a shockwave that obliterated his expensive stainless steel grill and melted the siding off his house. He tried to tell the cops he was just experimenting, but usually, science experiments don't end with a crater in the patio and a court summons. 13. Leave it to a man in Florida to reinvent the barbecue in the worst way possible. He attempted to cook a ribeye steak by wrapping it in tin foil and shoving it onto the engine block of his sedan while idling in the driveway. He figured the heat from the manifold would sear the meat perfectly. Instead, grease leaked out of the foil, hit the exhaust headers, and ignited a grease fire under the hood. He didn't get a medium-rare dinner. He got a scorched engine bay and a totaled vehicle. It was the most expensive steak in culinary history, and he still ended up ordering pizza while the fire department hosed down his ride. 14. Trying to impress a new date, a guy in Maine decided to play sushi chef without understanding what sushi grade actually means. He thawed a slab of generic, rock-hard salmon from the bottom of his freezer and hacked at it with a dull pocket knife until it looked like fish confetti. He served this microbiological nightmare with a side of confidence. The date ended abruptly about 2 hours later when the bacteria kicked in. She didn't just ghost him. She probably blocked his number while sitting in the emergency room waiting area. It's a tragedy, really. He wanted to steal her heart, but he only managed to steal her digestive dignity. 15. An impatient homeowner in Oregon woke up to a frozen water pipe and decided a hairdryer was too slow. He grabbed a propane blowtorch and crawled under the house, applying a direct, roaring flame to the copper. While the ice inside the pipe remained stubbornly frozen, the dry paper insulation surrounding it caught fire instantly. The crawl space turned into a blast furnace within seconds. As firefighters were cutting a hole in his floor to put out the blaze, they asked why he didn't use a space heater. He replied, "I thought this would be faster." Well, technically, burning the house down does warm up the pipes eventually. 16. A man in Pennsylvania grew tired of his hardwood floors creaking, so he consulted his own brain instead of a carpenter. His solution? Pouring melted scented candle wax directly into the gaps between the boards. He assumed it would act as a lubricant. Instead, it hardened into a sticky grout that trapped dog hair, dust, and crumbs. Now, the floor doesn't just squeak, it makes a disgusting crunching sound with every step, like walking on stale crackers. His wife has officially labeled the project Home Improvement Meets Horror Movie, and they can't sand it off without gumming up the machines. He silenced the squeak, but he amplified the stupidity. 17. In Nebraska, a Tesla owner noticed a tiny, barely visible scratch on his door and decided to fix it himself to avoid the body shop bill. He grabbed a sheet of coarse grit sandpaper, the kind used for stripping deck furniture, and started scrubbing. He thought he was buffing it out. In reality, he sanded straight through the clear coat, the paint, and the primer, leaving a massive dull gray patch of bare metal on a $100,000 car. When he took it to the dealership in a panic, the mechanic looked at the door, then at him, and described the damage as a willful crime against vehicles. 18. Another entry from Florida, where a man decided the best way to clean his grease-covered grill was with a high-pressure power washer, while the propane was still burning. He apparently thought the steam would help. When the jet of water hit the burning grease, it didn't clean anything. It created a massive fireball that blew the lid off the hinges and incinerated his patio umbrella. He managed to turn a simple burger night into a neighborhood spectacle. The grill is now sparkling clean, mostly because the fire burned off every atom of organic material, including his eyebrows and the burgers he was trying to cook. 19. A guy in Washington State wanted to bring the relaxation of camping into his living room by installing an indoor hammock. However, he skipped the stud finder and used tiny screw hooks designed for hanging Christmas lights. He climbed in with a book, fully expecting to float on air. Instead, gravity collected its debt immediately. The hooks ripped out of the drywall, sending him swinging like a wrecking ball directly into a shelving unit filled with framed family photos. He survived the fall without injury, but the glass covering his childhood memories didn't make it. On the plus side, he doesn't have to dust those shelves anymore. 20. Down in Louisiana, a homeowner decided to spruce up the hallway by using a concrete garden gnome as a doorstop. It seemed like a harmless, whimsical touch until he tripped over the little bearded statue in the middle of the night. He went airborne, crashed into the closet door, and broke 2 ribs falling onto the handle of his vacuum cleaner. As he lay there writhing in pain and gasping for air, he looked up to see the gnome standing its ground, completely unmoved. The worst part wasn't the hospital bill. It was the fact that the gnome just kept smiling that creepy, painted smile while its owner suffered. 21. A DIY lumberjack in Texas wanted to remove an old tree stump but refused to pay for a grinder. He tied a heavy-duty chain to the stump and the other end to the rear axle of his pickup truck. He floored it, expecting the stump to fly out. It didn't budge. However, his rear axle, bumper, and drive shaft tore completely free from the chassis with a sickening metal screech. He successfully turned a functioning truck into a stationary piece of yard art, proving that while torque is powerful, physics is always the final boss. 22. In South Dakota, a woman decided she was tired of working for a living and wanted to become an overnight crypto millionaire. She took her entire tax refund and dumped it into a suspiciously new currency she found via a random comment thread on a forum. She didn't check the credentials, she just saw dollar signs. Within 10 minutes of the transfer, the website vanished. The coins were worthless, and her bank account was empty. She effectively donated her refund to a scammer in a basement somewhere overseas. Now, she pays for everything in cash and looks at anyone mentioning blockchain with deep, deep suspicion. 23. A multitasker in North Dakota has redefined the concept of negligence. She left her curling iron plugged in and sitting on top of her wooden dresser, not for an hour, but for 3 solid days. She claimed it was her emergency beauty backup strategy. The constant heat eventually turned the dresser varnish into charcoal, set off the fire alarm, and singed the fur right off the tip of her cat's tail. The house didn't burn down, but the fire department suggested that maybe unplugging heat-generating appliances is a better strategy than keeping them ready for a surprise gala that isn't happening. 24. A creative thinker in Minnesota needed to mix a gallon of old house paint but couldn't find a stirring stick. He decided to tape the paint can to the rear wheel of his jacked-up truck and rev the engine to spin it. The duct tape failed almost immediately. The can launched like a missile, exploded against his garage door, and coated his pristine driveway and his wife's parked sedan in neon lime green. He wanted to mix paint. He ended up repainting the entire neighborhood in the color of deep regret. 25. A tech enthusiast in Colorado wanted to justify buying an expensive 3D printer, so he printed custom toilet paper holders for his bathrooms. Unfortunately, he used a type of filament that wasn't heat-resistant. After 2 days in a humid, steamy bathroom, the plastic holders softened and drooped like Salvador Dali clocks. Guests walked in to find the toilet paper rolls sitting sadly on the floor amidst a pile of melted plastic spaghetti. One friend noted that the house looked like where toilet paper goes to die. He saved $5 on hardware but lost all respect as an engineer. 26. In California, an aspiring influencer decided to fill his backyard pool with red gelatin to create a viral video. He dumped hundreds of pounds of powder into the water, creating a massive, jiggly nightmare. It was all fun and games until the gelatin solidified in the pipes, completely destroying the pool's filtration system and jamming the skimmer. Worse, the sweet smell attracted every raccoon and ant in the county, turning the pool into a glowing red wildlife buffet. The video got a few thousand views, but the plumbing bill cost more than a luxury cruise vacation. 27. A man in Oregon was convinced his houseplants looked sad and needed a pick-me-up. After playing them motivational podcasts failed to produce results, he decided to pour used coffee grounds and leftover espresso directly into the soil to wake them up. Apparently, plants don't process caffeine the same way tired office workers do. The acidity scorched the roots, and within 48 hours, every single plant had turned brown and died of a caffeine overdose. His girlfriend was not impressed and now exclusively waters plastic plants in his presence, just to mock his botanical murder spree. 28. In Nevada, a science-curious homeowner decided to build a mega-volcano in his backyard using the classic Diet Coke and Mentos trick. To add some flair, he taped sparklers to the side of the bottle. When the eruption happened, the soda spray soaked the sparklers, which then sputtered and ignited the dry mulch around the patio. The sticky, sugary fire spread to the vinyl siding of his house, melting it instantly. The local fire chief arrived to put out the smoldering landscaping and officially went on record calling it the dumbest science fair project ever attempted by an adult. 29. A resident in Maine clearly didn't understand the physics of an attic in July. She stored dozens of large, scented candles in boxes up there to clear clutter. As the summer heat turned the attic into an oven, the wax melted, pooled together, and seeped through the floorboards. It dripped through the drywall ceiling below, raining hot, lavender-scented wax all over her beige carpet and expensive sofa. The living room looked like a wax museum had a meltdown. The insurance adjuster stared at the ceiling, took a photo, and simply said, "Well, that's a new one for the file." 30. A bored man in Texas decided to build a legitimate escape room in his guest bedroom to entertain friends. He went all out, installing industrial-grade deadbolts and complex puzzles. The problem arose when he decided to test it alone and promptly lost the key to the final lock. After 2 hours of genuinely being trapped in his own house with no phone, panic set in. He had to smash the window with a heavy brass lamp to crawl out into his own backyard. He has since retired from game design and sticks to puzzles that don't require property damage to solve. 31. A bachelor in Alabama ran out of dishwasher pods and decided that regular liquid dish soap was basically the same thing. It is not. He squirted half a bottle of concentrated soap into the machine and hit start. 20 minutes later, his kitchen looked like a foam rave in Ibiza. The suds expanded with such force that they blew open the door seal, flooded the kitchen, and warped his laminate flooring. He saved 50 cents on detergent, but spent $3,000 on a carpenter to fix the water damage. 32. A woman in Louisiana needed a safe place to hide her diamond engagement ring while she went for a run, so she dropped it into the blender pitcher. It makes sense if you don't think about it. Days later, she forgot the ring was there, tossed in some frozen berries and yogurt, and hit the liquefy button. The terrible grinding noise wasn't ice. It was the diamond shredding the blades and the gold band being twisted into scrap metal. Her fiancé tried to be supportive, noting, "At least she didn't swallow it." But the local jeweler just shook his head and recommended a therapy session. 33. A guy in Arizona spilled a pint of gasoline in his garage and thought the quickest way to clean it up was with his shop vac. He apparently forgot that vacuum cleaners run on electric motors that generate internal sparks. The moment the gasoline fumes hit the motor brush, the vacuum transformed into a jet engine. It exploded, launching the plastic canister through the drywall and singeing his eyebrows off. He cleaned the spill, technically, by incinerating it along with his dignity and a good portion of his wall. 34. A college student in Georgia was running late for a job interview and noticed a stubborn wrinkle on his shirt. Instead of taking it off, he decided to iron it while wearing it, figuring he could just be careful. He was wrong. The hot iron instantly transferred heat through the cotton, causing second-degree burns on his chest. He ended up at urgent care instead of the interview, with a perfectly triangular burn mark that will serve as a permanent reminder that human skin is not an ironing board. 35. A creative homeowner in New Mexico decided he was too good for the local bowling alley and converted his garage into a private lane. He built a makeshift wooden floor and bought a professional 12-pound ball, but he forgot to install a proper backstop to absorb the impact. On his very first roll, he put a little too much muscle into it. The ball bypassed the pins, smashed through the drywall at the back of the garage, and collided directly with his water heater. The resulting explosion of hot water flooded the entire space. He managed to bowl a strike, a spare, and a busted plumbing system all in a single throw. 36. Someone in Illinois looked at the dangerous icicles hanging from their roof and decided the best tool for removal was an aluminum baseball bat. To make matters worse, they attempted this delicate operation during an active ice storm while balancing on a frozen ladder. Predictably, physics took over. The ladder slipped on the slick pavement, the homeowner fell into a snowbank, and the vibration from the bat caused a massive chunk of ice to detach and shatter the windshield of his car parked below. A neighbor watching from a safe distance later described it as watching Darwinism work in real time, frame by painful frame. 37. A fastidious cleaner in Georgia spotted a grease stain on her hardwood floor and decided to treat it with nail polish remover, which is essentially pure acetone. While scrubbing away, she lit a scented candle nearby to mask the chemical smell. She apparently skipped the chemistry class where they teach you that acetone fumes are highly flammable. The vapor ignited instantly, creating a flash fire that scorched a significant portion of her living room flooring and curtains. Firefighters found her standing in the yard, still holding the candle, looking confused and muttering that she just wanted the room to smell like vanilla. 38. A dedicated gamer in Arkansas faced the dreaded overheating warning on his console after a 12-hour session. Instead of letting it rest, he decided to force cool the machine by shoving it into his kitchen freezer. He left it there for an hour, thinking he was a genius. When he pulled it out and plugged it back in, The condensation that had formed inside the electronics caused an immediate short circuit. The console sizzled and died instantly. His gamertag was reportedly Ice Master, which is brutally ironic considering he bricked a $500 device with a block of ice and zero common sense. 39. A Halloween enthusiast in Indiana wanted to create the spookiest house on the block, so he installed a professional-grade fog machine inside his foyer. He cranked it to the maximum setting but forgot one crucial detail: disabling the smoke detectors connected to the monitored security system. Within minutes, the house was filled with dense, artificial fog, triggering every alarm and summoning 4 fire trucks to the scene. The firefighters stormed in, axes ready, only to find a guy standing in a cloud of glycol vapor holding a plastic skull. One responder noted it was the most dramatic and expensive pumpkin display he had ever seen. 40. Facing a cockroach infestation in Illinois, a homeowner decided to go nuclear with a chemical bug bomb. He set off the canister in the kitchen but neglected to extinguish the pilot light on his gas stove. As the flammable aerosol filled the room, it eventually reached the open flame. The resulting explosion was powerful enough to blow out the kitchen windows and push the walls outward, effectively turning the house into a convertible. The cockroaches probably didn't survive, but considering half the kitchen was incinerated, the victory was Pyrrhic at best. He traded a few bugs for a massive renovation bill. 41. A gullible iPhone user in Alabama watched a prank video claiming that the new models actually had a hidden headphone jack. You just had to drill through the casing to find it. He took a power drill and a 3.5mm bit and bored a hole straight into the bottom of his $1,000 device. Surprisingly, he did not find high-fidelity audio. He drilled directly into the battery and destroyed the phone's motherboard. He drilled for music, but struck oil in the form of absolute stupidity and avoided warranty. 42. A self-proclaimed handyman in Georgia decided that metal mounting brackets were a scam, so he attempted to hang a flat-screen TV from the ceiling using 4 shoelaces and a roll of duct tape. He actually got it to stay up for about 2 hours. Then gravity realized what was happening. The tape peeled, the laces snapped, and the TV plummeted, crashing through a glass lamp before landing directly inside his large saltwater aquarium. He later tried to explain to his wife that the setup was temporary, but the dead fish and the electrocuted television suggested that his judgment was permanently flawed. 43. In Rhode Island, a pet owner became convinced he could train his goldfish to do tricks by tapping on the glass and offering snacks. He grew frustrated when the fish didn't respond to his commands and tapped the tank with increasing force. Finally, he tapped a little too hard, and the entire front panel of the aquarium shattered. Gallons of water and gravel poured onto his carpet, and the trainee fish ended up surviving in a salad bowl while the owner frantically used beach towels to save his floor. His wife refused to let him get another tank and bought a cat instead. 44. A conspiracy theorist in New Jersey decided his smart refrigerator was an enemy agent spying on his conversations. In a fit of paranoia, he smashed the touchscreen display and ripped out the internal camera. To ensure the machine had learned its lesson, he poured a 2-liter bottle of soda directly into the ice maker mechanism. The liquid shorted out the control board, flooded the kitchen floor, and caused the fridge to emit a continuous, high-pitched alarm. Even in its death throes, the appliance managed to annoy him one last time, proving that the machine was indeed smarter than its owner. 45. A couple in California bought a massive vintage waterbed online, ignoring the fact that their second-floor apartment had strict weight limits. They filled the bladder with hundreds of gallons of water using a garden hose. The wooden joists groaned, the floor bowed, and eventually, the entire bed crashed through the ceiling into the living room of the tenant below. They wanted a floating sensation while they slept. Instead, they turned their downstairs neighbor's apartment into a surprise splash zone and a structural disaster. 46. A visionary director in Nebraska wanted to film a Matrix-style 360-degree video, but didn't have the budget for professional equipment. His solution was to duct tape his smartphone to one of the blades of his ceiling fan. He hit the switch to high, and for a brief second it worked. Then, centrifugal force ripped the phone free, turning it into a projectile that cracked his flat-screen TV screen before ricocheting into his dog's food bowl. The video file survived and consists mostly of a blur, followed by a loud crash and the sound of a dog whimpering. 47. An arrogant tech user in Ohio reprogrammed his Alexa to respond to the wake word, "Yo, genius," instead of the standard name. He thought it was hilarious until he fell asleep watching a documentary about Einstein. The narrator said the word genius, triggering the device, which misheard the subsequent dialogue as a request to play loud trap music at 3 in the morning. The sound system blared at full volume, waking the entire apartment complex. His neighbors didn't bother knocking on the door to complain. They simply called the police and eventually moved out to escape the noise. 48. In Missouri, a stressed-out resident decided to try an alternative therapy he saw online: a dry bath filled with bubble wrap instead of water. He filled his tub to the brim with packing material and took a running leap, expecting a soft, pillowy landing. He forgot that bubble wrap offers zero structural support. He crashed straight through the plastic and slammed his ribcage against the metal faucet. The satisfying pop-pop-pop sound he was hoping for was replaced by the sound of his own dignity deflating as he lay there in pain, wrapped in shipping supplies. 49. A tenant in Louisiana came up with a creative, albeit illegal, way to dodge paying rent. He claimed his apartment was haunted by a violent poltergeist. He smeared fake blood on the walls, played spooky sound effects at night, and even called a local news crew to investigate the paranormal activity. The plan backfired spectacularly when the landlord saw the news report, recognized the blood as ketchup, and evicted him not for non-payment, but for intentional property damage. The landlord suggested that if he wanted to live rent-free, he should go haunt a cardboard box under the bridge. All right, verdict time. Which one is the worst move? Microwaving the iPhone, using a blowtorch under the house, or the shotgun wasp hunt that murdered the lawnmower? Pick the champion of stupidity and explain why. And if you've ever tried a hack that cooked a gadget or wrecked a room, tell us what it cost you. Like it, subscribe, and let's build the world's dumbest museum together.